Here we go again.
Really. And I believe the reaction suggests, oh, come on, I'm going to say it, civil war.
A few moments later.
Civil war!
What's up, guys? Short Timer Prepping / John Claymore here, and we're talking about Tim Pool and, of course, the Civil War talk again. Now, guys, I didn't think about this before, but maybe it's possible that Tim does this stuff on slow news days. It was another YouTuber by the name of Stephen Michael Davis, who, quite frankly, has got a very good channel. I mean, don't entirely align with him politically, but the guy is obviously very, very smart. Responded to me on Twitter saying that he insinuated that Tim does it on slow news days. I think what he's trying to say is that Tim does these on days where, of course, people are absolutely not tuning in, meaning his viewership is a lot lower, and he may be saying it to kind of gin things up. I've actually seen Tim talk about it on days that, quite frankly, were good news days for him, but at the same time, though, some of Tim's takes are absolutely ridiculous. Then again, though, some of his takes aren't really and truly that far off, but there's something that's got to be said about Tim Pool's Civil War takes. There's a lot of things that he does not take into account. Now, guys, I've told you guys before that on this channel right here, I do plan on doing a project at some point in time. It's just with things ever changing, and I'll probably sit down probably for like 2 or 3 days and do actual, honest to God, PowerPoints on this. That I plan on doing a Civil War video of my own, but the thing about mine is that it's more along the lines of asking the question if it could ever happen, and if it did ever happen, how would it go? Well, I've talked about this a few times, and I've kind of hinted at what would probably happen is that a civil war in the United States would not actually be a civil war. It would mostly just be civil unrest in cities, and there are numerous things that could cause this. Now, of course, we saw the riots in 2020, and people were automatically thinking to themselves, my God, we got ourselves a civil war. No. That right there was just mostly liberals burning down very, very liberal areas. Kenosha, Wisconsin was kind of sort of the exception to the rule because Kenosha is not that liberal. But the thing is this right here. In a lot of these cases, cops were not called in. Cops were not showing up to actually take care of the issue. In some cases, they were. In some cases, the mayor screwed the cops over. Like case in point, Chicago. I will leave a link to in the description box of that right there to provide you guys some reference. But here's the thing. Tim bases a lot of this off of this guy named Stephen Marche. Stephen Marche is from Canada. He lives in Canada. He's only been in the United States like a couple of times. One of those times he came down, he went to go speak on Tim Pool's Timcast IRL special. Now, guys, I have ranted against Tim Pool a few times, but not because I dislike him. I've ranted against him because I think he lacks a lot of common sense. And a lot of times he throws out a lot of smugness, and oftentimes he doesn't understand what he's talking about. And sometimes he will take on these positions where he actually gets taught something, like, say, in the conversations he had with Steve Bannon. He'll turn right back around and he'll parrot those talking points for about 3 or 4 days on his news segments, and then he'll turn right back around and throw them under the bus. I mean, by the way, Tim at one point in time was pretty much a part of the Blame America crowd. He'll never admit to it, but he was definitely a Bernie bro, and he was definitely on the left. He's been red-pilled to a certain degree, but the guy is not really truly conservative, even though he's been called right-wing by the actual left. But then again, though, if you're not left of Cenk Uygur, of course, you're going to be called right-wing, which is crazy because Jimmy Dore is actually further to the left than Cenk is, but yet Jimmy is right-wing. As a matter of fact, Noam Chomsky is now right-wing, according to Cenk Uygur. But there's some things that we got to speak about here. And, you know, the thing about Marche is I've heard him speak, and he does say some things that, quite frankly, could happen and could be true. However, the problem is that he does not live in America, and therefore he's not around American culture. You see, there's this thing about people from overseas, and of course this is the other half of what Stephen Marche gets wrong. That and I'll give you a great example of this. I heard Europeans talk about when they came to the United States, they mostly go to cities like New York, Chicago, and they never believed that someone like Donald Trump could have gotten elected. However, the thing was this right here. They were discounting rural voters. They were discounting small town voters. The same thing happened in Brexit. If you went to London, you never would have thought that Brexit would have occurred. Of course, when you get to the smaller areas of England, you find out very, very much that people are very, very much in favor of Brexit at that time. Just to give you an example, there are a lot of very, very big-time misconceptions, and I don't think people follow up on them, so therefore they don't exactly have all the facts on their side when they come into a discussion or when they bring up something as trivial as Civil War. Now, guys, there's some things I want to talk about here. The first thing we're going to talk about is what he does not get. The second thing we're going to talk about is the Roe v. Wade issue that, of course, is the catalyst for what he's talking about. Of course, he's trying to compare this to the issue of slavery. I don't really truly see one. We're going to talk about the political nature, the demographics that are going on. We're also going to talk about why it is that the left will eventually shrink and devolve. And, of course, if the right versus the left did occur, then yeah, we'll talk about exactly how that right there would go down. But first and foremost, before we do that, I made this clip earlier that I plan on putting into this video to kind of explain to you guys that Roe v. Wade being overturned is not the only case on the docket that could set something off or set the liberals off. And what Tim doesn't seem to realize is that these cases are coming at breakneck lightning speed. So let's go ahead and roll this. And those cases are going to be these right here in particular. Number one, you have a Second Amendment case. This right here is going to make the liberals' heads explode even more, okay, because we all know how the left hates the Second Amendment. There's another case that's going to be involved as well. This case right here covers school choice. It's going to make religious schools be able to actually. It's what it's going to do basically is it's going to include religious schools in the forte of school choice. Like you'll actually be able to have the choice to actually go to a private institution for education. There are one of several cases down the line that could spark some type of conflict that Tim Pool keeps on running his mouth about, but yet he's hinging on the very issue of the day because he's got to have clicks. He's got to have people watch his channel because yesterday's segment, his Monday segment at 10 a.m., it really didn't net him a whole lot of views. It was a pretty bad segment. Don't worry, there's going to be a video coming out on that one right there as well. But here's the deal also. You've also got the court case out of Colorado where the guy refused to make a cake for a gay couple. Then you've also got the issue of gay marriage itself. Another issue that Barack Obama basically ran through the United States Supreme Court and Justice John Roberts capitulated to, which, by the way, that issue right there is another issue that, in my opinion, needs to go back to the states. So there's a lot of cases coming up here that, quite frankly, could shape this entire ordeal, not just freaking abortion. Every single one of those cases, by the way, has sort of got this, there's this sort of this inkling that these cases may actually lean to the right, meaning that the justices are starting to lean in favor of the are actually starting to lean in favor of the rights arguments. Say, for example, the Second Amendment case that's coming up. That right there, of course, this right here is just going to strengthen the Second Amendment. The next case is going to strengthen school choice. You see, these cases right here are actually strengthening the right. And they're happening at such a breakneck pace that the liberals are going to run out of issues. They're going to want to run on these issues going into 2022. The problem is that when you've got things like, say, what's going on in Florida with the groomer crap with Disney, the CRT crap, a lot of things have turned a lot of people away from the Democratic Party this year, and Joe Biden's approval rating is very low. And people are starting to see how these people are reacting. And Tim Pool's natural reaction with well, I guess the Civil War is coming. What Tim doesn't seem to understand is that the vast majority of liberals live in these very, very big cities. He had one guy on a while back on IRS special, Timcast IRL special. Yeah, I know I'm like, my voice is kind of jacked up here. But Tim had this person up here who explained to him that if a civil war happened in America, it would be like, say, Syria. You'd have people forming factions within cities. However, the problem is that right there would not be a civil war in the United States. That right there would just simply be massive civil unrest, and we're going to talk about the things that could cause this. But I do want to talk about Roe v. Wade and this issue right here, and we'll come right back to the unrest here shortly. This issue is not the same as slavery. Okay, now, I'm not going to go into the actual, I'm not going to actually go into the minutiae of the Civil War, but we'll give you a very, very brief synopsis of both arguments. The North, Abraham Lincoln, he was president at that time, he believed that slavery needed to be undone. Now, slavery itself was a much broader topic that's got a lot of nuance involved in it, which I shall explain at a later date. But see, Tim kind of tries to use this as an idiom to kind of explain things. You see, the South at the time, they told the men in the field that the reason why they were fighting was for Southern independence, states' rights. We could argue about this all day and night. I personally don't believe that states' rights was the major argument. Was the actual major deal, but at the same time, though, it's always been brought up that states' rights versus what people believe to be the tyrannical North. This right here is a little bit different. See, Sticks Hexenhammer made a point about this the other day, where he was talking about the fact that what would probably happen is that you would probably get like an us versus them mentality between red and blue states. Now, people might think that that right there is a civil war, but the problem is this right here. In the battleground states itself, states like Pennsylvania, which is actually socially conservative, Wisconsin, socially conservative, Michigan, for the most part, socially conservative, especially outside Detroit, especially outside of Ann Arbor. A lot of these areas are socially conservative, but sometimes they vote naturally Democrat because a lot of them are blue dogs. However, in some cases, you're seeing a lot of Democrat voters coming over to the right, and you're also, and this, by the way, is due to the voter registration, and you're seeing a lot of people not only come over there, but you're seeing a lot of disenchanted liberals who are not happy with the agenda. So what you're probably going to see is, due to this whole thing with Roe v. Wade, and by the way, I'm showing you guys some tweets from some of these very, very famous left-wing personalities. Nikki Fried, a person who, by the way, was all in favor of sticking a jab in you. By the way, the vaccine was supposed to be a Civil War issue, according to Tim Pool. Ethan Klein, who's not really truly a leftist, he's just a grifter, who, by the way, got canceled by his own crowd, which is kind of funny to me that he did. Jordan Peterson was actually prophetic on that one there. And, of course, you see how far it's gotten. You've gone from safe, legal, and rare to people committing actual, open, honest-to-God infanticide. And people are beginning to get upset with this. And then, of course, you got Karens, like, say, this person right here.
Fully cultivating these Supreme Court justices so they could have a majority on the bench who would accomplish something that the majority of Americans do not want. 69% of people across this country, red states and blue states, old people and young people, want Roe versus Wade to maintain as the law of the land. We need to do that. And we have a right. Extremists, we've heard enough from the extremists. And we're tired of it. Thank you. Senator.
Looks like a kindergarten boy.
Stand on the right to an abortion for some woman who can't support the children she has.
Is that her limo to take her to Hogwarts?
Desperately trying to keep her family together. Let's get them on the record voting on that. And if we don't have enough votes to pass it now, we get everybody on the record, and then we take that to the public in November. We've got less than 200 days until Election Day. Roe versus Wade,
and
in
that's
that sense,
the reason
is on
for
the
it.
ballot.
Is intimidation. It's trying to scare people. They're trying to gin up riots and protests right now so that people stay home and don't vote. Or they're trying to convince enough people out there that the right is as extreme as they are, believing that, kids should be put on puberty blockers. This is what your former vice president said, that affirming your child's gender, meaning not their gender, is one of the most important things you can do. They're trying to say, look at how extremist the right is. They're trying to remove your right to abortion. Let's make sure that message is heard up until and including elections. This isn't any different than the playbook where Kamala Harris said they should keep right.
Yeah, chief line in the face, basically wanting to intimidate people. And this right here is what the overall political end game is. You see, what the left wants to do is continue to go further and further and further left. Okay, I'm going to have a video out later on this week about asking the question: has the left gone too far left? Which, by the way, we already know this, but of course, it's going to be a nuanced take on everything that you've been seeing this past week. We've really and truly gone too far left, or at least the Democratic Party has, and it's actually pulled the Republican Party closer to the center, which, by the way, is making it more appealing. Now, after a while, Republicans are going to have to decide if they want to stay in that direction or go back further to the right, because the belief is they may lose their constituency, but we will talk about that in another video. The thing is that Tim is not understanding is that the vast majority of these left-wingers are in cities. A lot of these cities, by the way, are located on bridges. A lot of these cities control the media. However, just because they're on TV does not mean they're physically in front of your face. Chances are, if you go somewhere like, say, where I live at here in North Carolina, you're not going to run to somebody who's an ardent leftist. You're not going to run to somebody who's going to get overly political with you. Same thing in places like Florida. Same thing in most places that are not big cities. You're not going to run into it. Of course, there's politics out there, but unless you're inside these big cities, chances are you're not going to run too many of these leftists. So leftists right then and there are kind of restricted as far as their movement is concerned. So at best, the most that they could do is cause problems within their own cities. Of course, defund the police, the riots. You guys saw that in 2020. We all witnessed what happened in Atlanta and some of these cities. And by the way, some of these liberal cities are not actually on the water itself. I'm using the water as a case to say, hey, look, if there's a food shortage in the country and these cities devolve, which ultimately is what I believe will happen to the left, it will devolve and it will split into multiple factions. If this right here is the case, people will be less inclined to deliver products to them, and next thing you know, they're going to be up a creek without a paddle, which I will go ahead and explain here in detail right now. You see, the thing is this right here, leftists don't seem to understand, and by the way, go back to the whole Chaz Chop thing in Seattle back in 2020. Look at how quick it fizzled out. As a matter of fact, that's actually how this entire ordeal would end. It would end with a major fizzling out. It wouldn't go out with a bang, but we will explore the possibility if it did or did not later on in this video. The thing is this right here. In these cities, you can't grow crops, or if you do grow crops, which by the way, this is why red states are so important, not to mention the fact we got all the military bases too. This is the biggest reason why we get more funding, because of the military. So anytime you hear somebody like Cenk Uygur say, well, you guys get more funding and you do less, just look at Cenk and say, look, man, you are obviously an idiot, because all the military bases are here, not to mention all the manufacturing, most of it is here, especially in red areas. So do us all a favor and shut the hell up with your fat water buffalo ass. But here's the deal. The thing is this right here that you got to understand is that in these cities, you can't grow crops without somebody coming in there and taking it, especially in a devolved society. If you don't have cops, you got massive crime rates. You're at greater risk of having things stolen from you. And of course, if you were and like I said, your plunder, your loot would just be stolen by somebody else because of the gang crime and everything that's going on there. Also, something else too. Go back to those riots once again. Portland, Washington State, Portland, Seattle, Chicago. Cities, areas with massive gun control laws. What they typically tend to do is they prey on the old and the weak. Now, after a while, the old and the weak, they eventually just get out of there. They go to secluded areas after a while. They want to get away from it. Now, the demographic changes that people believe that a lot of these people who are moving from these blue areas are voting blue when they get to these red areas. That is not entirely the case. There was a study out of Texas that showed that a lot of people that were moving into Texas, transplants, moving into states like Texas and Arizona and even Florida were actually voting Republican. The way I think about it is this right here. If they're coming from a big city and moving to a rural area, just go ahead and know they're going to be bringing big city politics with them. If they're moving from a rural area to a rural area, chances are the politics are not going to change. If they're moving from a suburban area to a rural area, chances are the politics may evolve to yours. And if they're coming from a small town to a small town, chances are the politics are not going to change. If they're going from small town to big town, they're probably not going to change either. It's the people who come from much, much bigger cities, much, much more liberal areas within those cities that you got to understand, you actually got to worry about. Now, there's also something else, too, that we have to kind of sort of go through here, and it's this going back to Roe v. Wade. One of the things that they're going to use this election cycle is that this affects poor people. Okay, well, right then and there, you look kind of hypocritical because you want the poor to live, but at the same time, you want to be for the poor people. You want to give them a chance, you want to give them a hand up, but yet you also want to take away their babies. You also want to kill the possible seed that could grow into that said individual that may turn out to be successful. This is one of the main reasons why I'm not in favor of abortion, because you're cutting off a life before it really and truly begins to get started. Okay, this is not like killing somebody in the field during combat. This is a little bit different. It's actually a much bigger difference when you think about it. We'll say that for another video. But the thing is this right here, they're going to use this ploy this year, and it's just not going to work. The issues of the day are just, too adequate. Let's just put it this way here. No man who goes to a gas pump right now is thinking about some fat-ass cat lady Karen and her wanting to abort a child. No man is thinking about that. No woman is thinking about it. They're thinking about how they're going to actually fill up their gas tanks. They're thinking about stuff like that right there. Now, I know you guys have heard me talk about this, and you probably thought to yourself, well, man, you're describing everything Tim Pool is describing, that there will be a civil war. But like I said before, you got to understand the vast majority of these leftists who would want to start a civil war are confined to areas where they cannot get out. And even if they got into an area full of conservatives, how long do you think they would actually last? This right here is the point that I'm trying to get across. The demographics do not suit it. What the demographics do suit is they suit the possibility of, say, something like a food shortage. They suit the possibility of civil unrest. It suits the possibility that, let's just say that crime goes through the roof. It becomes a war zone in the city of New York. You're already dropping your loads off in New Jersey without actually going in there. What if said individual says, you know what, I'm not going to drive into Newark either? You see, what they're doing with their actual civil unrest is that they're actually hurting themselves in the future. You see, they don't understand that the people who live in the small town areas, the rural areas, the manufacturing areas are actually their lifeline. They view us as foreign. They view the working class as a whole as foreign personnel. They have no respect, and they become much, much more elitist, which, by the way, we'll talk about that in that video they have planned later on for this week as the left gone too far. This right here is who they are. This is how they operate. Now, their political nature, by the way, also, like I said, something as simple as, say, going back to Roe v. Wade, okay? In the video that I made earlier, which, by the way, I'm releasing that video to this channel here, too. Think about it like I'm doing 4 uploads, even though it's 2 videos on 2 separate channels. The thing is this right here, and I explained it towards the end of the video, that the real reason why these people are so triggered is because taking away the ability to have an abortion is just telling them that you have to be held accountable for your actions. They don't like the idea of being held accountable. If you're not willing to be held accountable, then what the hell makes me think you're going to pick up a rifle and actually go fight somebody of your own size and stature? Think about what was going on in those cities in 2020. They were attacking most of these cities. They had very, very strict gun laws. Okay? If people were armed and if a few incidents had occurred, I guarantee you the Antifa crap would have stopped. Basically, at the end of the day, also, the left is very, very much self-defeating. It's a purity test for these people. We saw this with Chaz Chop. They completely ate themselves. Also, when they went out there and tried to actually grow plants and grow crops, they ended up implementing segregation while they were in there. Look, It's a defeating ideology. Now, guys, I can explain to you why it is that the left prevailed in Russia back in 2000 and back in 1917, 1918. The reason why is because the people actually wanted it, especially, and by the way, at the time, Russia had a much, much larger city population than rural population. The United States is not, you could probably make that argument here. However, when you actually break down metro to rural small town areas alone, you come to find out that the people in the cities, they're not the actual full majority in the country. Of course, somebody could actually argue that right there. I argue that it is not. But the thing is this right here, and this right here is where we're going to end the video at. The left, of course, like I said before, self-defeating. Eventually it's going to shrink and it's eventually going to devolve because the base is in the cities. What people are not seeming to understand is that because of the fact that they don't like the idea of being held accountable, they don't like the idea of work. If they were to actually get, and by the way, they're very, very anti-gun. If they were to get into an actual physical, honest-to-God fight with a bunch of righties, especially in rural areas and small towns, even inside the cities, I highly doubt that the fight would last too long. It would end within a day or two. But guys, I don't think a civil war would be necessary because I think that after everything that's been going on this entire year so far, with the left, with Elon Musk buying Twitter, we already saw their heads explode. We're seeing their heads explode right now with Roe v. Wade being overturned. You're probably going to see their heads explode with the case in New York, which, by the way, will guarantee that people can actually carry their firearms around. You're also seeing constitutional carry. With constitutional carry comes much, much more lenient self-defense laws. With that right there, eventually you get the school choice. You see all the meltdowns that occur, and it's happening with a Democrat president under their watch. The only thing that's going to happen is that they're going to get frustrated. They may have a small blow-up, but ultimately at the end of that blow-up, it just turns to a giant fizzle, and it just sort of goes away. It eats itself out of existence. Now, whether that same entity was to come back at a later date, that right there is a topic for another video. But from the current time right now, I disagree with Tim Pool. I do not believe that abortion will be a reason for a civil war. As a matter of fact, I don't see a civil war happening right now, as in like tomorrow. But we will discuss the topic further on this channel because it is a prepping channel. Now, guys, with that there being said, I did do an updates video to kind of let you guys know what was eventually going to happen on this channel. I'm probably going to do another one to kind of further explain things. Now, either way, though, that video will come out this week. It'll probably be released with the video I'm going to do on Musk asking the question if the left has gone too far. With that there out of the way, though, guys, make sure you guys hit that like button. Make sure you guys subscribe. Make sure you guys leave a comment in the comment section. I'd like to get you guys' thoughts, and I'll see you guys later.
I suddenly remembered my Charlemagne. Let my armies be the rocks and the trees and the birds in the sky.